Welcome once again to the official MUFON Podcast. I am your host, Richard Beckwith. Tonight, my guest is writer, cinematographer, director, and producer Ron James. Ron has worked on films like The Search for the Crystal Skulls, Dead Whisper, and Travis, the true story of Travis Walton. He is also the production genius behind MUFON's media crown jewel, MUFON TV, currently the only place on the internet where you can find exclusive, original MUFON-produced content. In addition to its publicly stated goal of being dedicated to the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity, MUFON's goal is to educate the public regarding the reality of the UFO phenomenon and to encourage open discussion and debate on the subject. Ron James is giving us just that, and I am happy and proud to have him here with me tonight. Ron James, welcome to the program.
All right. Thanks a lot, Richard, for having me on.
I appreciate you being here. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about today. In particular, MUFON TV. You've done such a great job with MUFON TV. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about our platform. You produce such great content for us, and we all enjoy watching it. We all subscribe, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about MUFON TV.
Well, it's a very interesting field, and there's a lot of places where you can go to get your information about the ET subject. And I've always wanted to align myself with the best source of information. And, for everything, all the ups and downs that MUFON's been through over the years, there's still the organization that is very scientifically based. And that's the angle that they're coming from. There's no sideshows. There's no carnival barking going on for the most part. MUFON is solidly the world's largest and oldest organization studying this. And so as I started thinking about what kind of niche I wanted to occupy in my career as far as being a part of getting this information out to people, that was the alignment that I chose to have, because I think that at the end of the day, it's the most credible place. And so we set out to build the world's largest commercial-free repository of pertinent data to the topic. And right now, MUFON Television has about well over 500 things on their presentations, mostly from MUFON archives and then original productions that I've been doing ever since I started the channel. And the thing about the MUFON archives and the MUFON symposiums is that they're not these UFO symposiums where these people show up and start talking about far out stuff. Everybody that presents at a MUFON symposium is coming with some evidence, with a story that can be, relatively supported and might be something that your mainstream person who wants to know more about the topic would listen to, instead of, just the far out stories that you're just never going to tell at a bar and have any credibility when you're trying to convince people that this is a real topic. So I took the best media that's been created, the most relevant and the most scientifically based, and we put it into a really cool online television channel.
I love it too. I've subscribed and I enjoy the channel, and I have to say that you do such a great job with the production, and really you have great guests on. You have all the latest folks that are involved in this. You've had all the folks that appear in some of the larger productions on television and so forth, but we managed to get them because we know all these folks, and all these folks, and there have been a lot of really interesting things happening, and so you've really stayed on the edge of all that. We appreciate it.
It's really fun because I'll get these phone calls from people, and they'll say, "Hey, did you hear about this? And did you hear about this guy? Richard Dolan or David Hatcher Childress, who's a good friend of mine. These guys that you see on TV, and I know them all, and they'll talk to me. And so when something happens, we have a really good relationship with A&E. And so when they've got a new show coming up, they'll call me up and they'll invite me to the parties. I get to hang out with the guys that are in the show, and I'll help them to promote the show. And we cross promote with MUFON a lot. And that's really a lot of fun. So we've developed a really good reputation in the field, and we've developed really good relationships. And so when you see something on the mainstream news about a new event unfolding, or you see Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon on History Channel's Unidentified, chances are they're talking to us at the same time. And we've got some really amazing material that's getting ready to surface around some of that stuff.
I have to tell you, I'm really proud to work with MUFON because of that, and that's the reason that I joined the organization to begin with, because it was, in my view, the only organization that really took a matter-of-fact approach to the issue of UFOs, not making any judgments about where they come from, really just being a data gathering organization with the idea in mind that we're going to take all this data and put it in together to find out more about what the phenomenon is. And that's what drew me to MUFON. What is happening right now, Ron? What kind of shows do you have in the pipeline that you're really looking forward to presenting?
So we're actually developing. I've been kind of pecking away at this for a while, and if you go to MUFONtelevision.com, you can see a page of original shows. And so we're developing those into an ongoing news show that's going to be produced at a level that's kind of like just a regular network show. I've done bits and pieces of it. I've done demos. I've done entire episodes, and you can go and you can see that stuff. But one of the other things that we're really working on is making MUFON appeal to mainstream people, because the fact of the matter is, if you join MUFON, it's because you not only are interested in maybe becoming a field investigator, which is of course the core of what MUFON is all about, but it's also your community. If you care about the ET topic, this is where you need to be. This is where you're going to be able to meet and talk to other people that have had similar experiences and have a similar point of view. And over the years, the experiencer phenomenon for sure is something that has really started to explode. A lot of people are telling the same story. And there's very, very few places where experiencers can go and find community and find people to talk to. So we have new programming about experiencers coming out, a whole new show just focused on that. We could talk about that some more if you want. It's pretty exciting because
I do want to talk some more about that. Because I believe it was in the last episode of Unidentified with Lou Elizondo, and they talked exactly about this phenomenon only occurring with military personnel. And they had some folks on there that talked about having these experiences while they were on duty. One guy in particular, one couple of guys I remember from this documentary presentation was they were on one side of a wall or something near a base, and an object came down and then they lost time. You recall that? Right?
Yeah, the very last episode. And I'll tell you from an inside perspective, what's very interesting about that is that Lou and Chris especially, and TTSA to a certain extent, have been very, very reluctant to just come out and say this is an extraterrestrial presence. It's been almost a taboo. It's like, look, we can talk about the fact that these things exist. We can talk about the fact that we don't know what they are. We can talk about all of the different types of evidence that we're gathering, but we have to draw the line at saying they're ET. And there's a reason for that. And it has to do with all of the work that's happening in Washington right now to get this thing in front of the Congress and to get mainstream people to associate with it. And so it's been much more effective for them to frame it as this is a threat we must investigate than to say these are objects being piloted by little green men. So to bring that back around, the fact that they actually did that in the last episode of Unidentified is really an effort to go ahead and start to frame this the way it really needs to be framed. And so it's hats off to Lou and Chris and the guys working on that show, because they went there, and it's a quantum leap in their policy and their position from where they were before, to open the door that this is probably going on.
But it's not a quantum leap in reasoning if you're looking at it from an extraterrestrial perspective, or attempting to. I mean, clearly, if you're studying a species, or if you've been involved with them for some time and you want to keep up on maybe changes that are taking place internally, biologically, to them, to their DNA, in the face of external environmental factors, you want to be able to take them every once in a while, and you may want to be interested in particular family lines, so that you can you have a baseline from which you can determine what sort of changes are taking place within, our DNA and so forth. Wouldn't you agree that it just makes sense if you're looking at it from an ET's perspective,
Oh no, absolutely. When I said a quantum leap, what I meant was that it was a very big leap for Lou and Chris and the people
Oh, yeah.
making the show and the people controlling that information to actually go there. It was a connection that they really wanted to avoid. In fact, I asked Lou at our symposium during the press conference. I point blank asked him. I said, "Look, Bob Bigelow's been on TV saying there's aliens. You went on CNN and said we might not be alone. We know Bigelow was working with you. It was before that was public knowledge that he actually went on 60 Minutes and said that. How do you reconcile all of these appearances and all of these statements by all these insiders with the fact that right now you're not willing to say, I believe that there's an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race?" And it was not a question he was comfortable answering. And so what I mean is, now that they are going there publicly, they're not like jumping out saying, "Oh yes, it's definitely aliens," but they're opening that door, and they're not any longer going out of their way to deny it.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And that means so much. It means that they're acknowledging that this is a part of the phenomenon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we talk about experiencers and the phenomenon and how it's unfolding and developing, that is evolving also. Back in the day when you would talk about talk about an alien abduction, it was all like jokes about anal probes. You're surrounded by all these grays, and it's a horrifying, terrifying experience. And I guess there's still some of that out there, but the experiencer phenomenon is growing and it's changing. It is changing to a situation where a lot of times these people are having very positive connections with ET. A lot of times they're being shown stuff, and they're having experiences that they cannot deny. Once it happens to you, you can't go, "Oh, that didn't happen. It's not real." And I believe that a big part of disclosure is actually happening on an individual level. People are having experiences that leave them completely changed. They absolutely know them to be correct, and these forces and these races and these beings are showing themselves to more and more of us, and that makes a lot more sense in a way than trying to get some government to spill the beans, especially when they've been lying to us this whole time. Causing that change on an individual level that can no longer be denied is it's a pretty good strategy if you're ET and you want people to know what's going on.
Yeah, if you're to contact them individually en masse, and get some sort of a consensus among the population and also gauge the waters, so to speak, to see how the population might be able to handle it. Maybe the ETs or some of them are reaching a conclusion that maybe we might be ready to learn of their presence. I'm going to ask you something, and I've brought this up with a couple of my guests before, but I'm curious if you have heard about the friendship contacts. Have you heard about this?
No, not by that name.
This took place in Italy in the 1950s and 60s, and to my understanding is still taking place today. There's an author out there who I believe is now deceased, and you will find Paula Harris mentioned in his books, but his name's Stefano Breccia, and he talks about ongoing contacts with human, actual human extraterrestrials. And these folks purportedly had bases underground and under the Mediterranean Sea, and actually also allegedly had bases and still have bases all over the planet. But they have this technology that allows them they don't need large construction efforts to build bases. They have a mechanism essentially that creates a space in whatever location it is that they want to build their base, and they don't have stable entrances. They just go. They actually create an entrance just for the purpose of going in and out, and then when they go in, it collapses behind them. And I mean, this is just one of their many technologies. But I was fascinated by this book. The guy's name is Stefano Breccia, and I noticed that Lou Elizondo went to Italy and he met with the Italians. And I know that some of the Italians were involved in those friends that he met with were, if not involved in the friendship contacts, were aware of the friendship contacts. And I'm wondering if that may not have had something to do with what Lou said about having to redefine what it means to be human. That he may know something that we don't necessarily about these friendship contacts.
Well, Lou walks a very, very fine line, and I have so much respect for him because
Yes.
certainly he knows a whole lot more than he's ever going to be able to tell us if he doesn't get his way. But at the other side of it, he's a patriot and he's honoring his oath and his word. And so it's got to be really, really hard to wish you could share this stuff with people, but knowing that that you have to follow a program protocol. None of that would surprise me if it was true. I think that there's a variety of different races that are engaging us in some way. And I personally believe that they don't all have the same agenda. And so you hear these stories about different types of things happening to people. Certainly an advanced race living in a hidden nature on the planet would really explain a lot of this technology that we're seeing. And it would explain it just as easily as aliens from outer space or anything else. So I'm going to research that a little more and look into it because
I think you
if we
should.
went
He's
to
got
Italy
2
and he
books.
talked to those guys,
This guy's got 2 books, Stefano Breccia, and I've been
sure.
fascinated. One is called Amicitia, or the Friendship Contacts, and there were many different people involved. These are, and we're talking about very high level government officials in Italy. People that were, there were also authors and scientists that were involved in these contacts. Many of them still remain, haven't come out publicly to talk about these contacts. They purportedly ceased after some time, but they are also allegedly continuing. And I think Paula Harris knows a little bit about that. So I'd like to talk to Paula, because I think she's looked into those cases, and I think those contacts are ongoing. I would not be surprised if they continue. The friendship contacts.
Well, I emceed Paula's event and produced it for her one year, and so certainly you should get her on. If you don't have her contact, I'll put you in touch with her.
Yeah,
She's
I have.
great. Paula is going to go down
have her on
history as
soon.
one of the pictures. Okay, very cool.
So let's talk a little bit about the. We have some shows that you've produced, but we also have a ton of stuff in the archives. We've got shows that have been around for a while, and we've got a lot of stuff on YouTube and on MUFON TV, right?
Yeah. So what we do is we like the new symposiums that are produced going back to about 2016. The only place we really put the full length symposiums is on MUFON television. And then as part of MUFON's responsibility to the public to share our information, we make little highlight reels of those and we put them out for free on YouTube. And we direct people to go to MUFON TV if they want to see this stuff. And then we have original shows that we produce. We do really nice MUFON reports, about 9 or 10 a month, that are very detailed about MUFON specific cases. Then I produce my shows. Coming up shortly, I sit down with James Fox 2 days before the phenomenon came out, and I've had to sit on this piece for a while just to get the film to make a good debut. But it's a fantastic discussion about the trials and tribulations of making films, and especially in this day and age. And so James and I sat down. It's a beautiful 3-camera shoot, and it's a side of James Fox that I don't think people are familiar with. It's going to be a really nice piece. And then I've got an interview with Zen Benefil. I actually shot this a few years ago. I never published it because at the time, the experiencer stories that I was being told in the interview just didn't really ring true. And I was kind of like just rolling my eyes. And now a few years later, I'm like, okay, you know what? There might be something to this, and I'm going to go ahead and finish producing it and put it out. And then we just finished a fantastic piece with Paul Davids. We're calling it Back to Roswell. We dissect the movie piece by piece, and we talk about where it was based in fact and how it's still relevant today. And that's really cool. That's actually, you can go and see that now. And then we've got our Experiencer show is coming along. It's really, really good. It's covering all of the different aspects of the Experiencer phenomenon, and that's growing. We have an interview with Ray Hernandez, who founded the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Experiences or something like that, talking about how near-death experiences, some types of alien abductions and other types of quantum experiences where you're connecting with other beings, or you're going outside of your body, or you're having some kind of extra physical encounter, may have a connection that's rooted in the nature of reality and how we perceive it. And so I think the experiencer phenomenon alone just, it's blowing up. It's blowing up in what it means, and it's blowing up in how many people are having it, and it's blowing up into what it actually says about our reality and the world that we live in. So
Yeah,
that's a few of them.
it speaks to a different reality, doesn't it? I love Ray Hernandez. I attended a conference with him a few years ago. It was a small conference for an outfit called the Institute for Human Cosmic Interaction. He was there with Dr. Sprinkle and Barbara Lamb and a few other folks. It was just a small invitation only thing, and he had a fantastic recollection to tell about some experiences that he had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was fascinating to listen to, and that was really an honor to be able to attend that conference with him, and he continued. And what was the outfit that they formed? Free, right?
Yeah, it was. It's been a while, and the group has since disbanded, but it ended up being the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation, because Edgar, shortly before he passed away, gave Ray his blessing to add his name to it. And, Edgar, gosh, what a great guy, right?
Yeah.
So they called it the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraordinary or Extraterrestrial Encounters. And they put out a big report. They did a giant survey, and they put out a big report, trying to tie this stuff together. It was very interesting.
And isn't that the conclusion that you reached, though, too, Ron, is that after you're looking into this for a long period of time, don't you find that these things are sort of all related clearly somehow?
Well, it's interesting that you asked me that, because I had a really hard time connecting the dots. If you want to say that a near-death experience is connected to, say, an alien abduction, or connected to a spiritual encounter where you see angels, the only way I can really see that from my point of view is maybe by some of the mechanics in reality that make that possible, but not necessarily in theme. So it's an interesting idea. And if I've talked to Kathleen Martin, MUFON's experiencer researcher, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, and she does amazing work. And MUFON's put out, its own reports on experiencers. And she really likes to keep the word experiencer kind of sequestered to people having extraterrestrial encounters. And I don't think she's a big fan of it being applied to all these other things. So it's really interesting to see these two different perspectives and try to make sense of them. And so, yeah, I think that there's something to the experiencer phenomenon being broader, but I don't think it necessarily means that we're in contact with the same entities looking different or anything like that. I think if you're having a spiritual encounter with an angelic being, then maybe that is it. Maybe it might be happening in your mind the same way that a extraterrestrial encounter might happen, but I don't think it's necessarily the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think what you're saying is it's all a matter of interpretation.
Yeah, and it's a matter of, are there different entities reaching out to us in different ways, and maybe they're using the same pipeline to get inside our minds or to get into our perceptions, but that doesn't necessarily mean they come from the same place. Well, ultimately everything comes from the same place, but in our scattered reality.
And I have to say for myself, I do consider myself a scientist. I have difficulty assigning a religious reason to things. I sort of I don't really see things from a religious perspective. You know what I'm saying? But I like, for example, if I think that consciousness continues after death, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those who think that way also subscribed to some sort of like a Christian sort of a paradigm, or believe that there is some intelligent design as the result of some bearded white person who sits on a throne somewhere and does this kind of stuff. You see what I'm getting at?
Sure. There's, that's a really, in contemporary spirituality, the idea that that there is this like God being who's just kind of overseeing us all and tweaking our lives and doing however. A lot of people are kind of moving away from that, and they're moving toward more of God would be the sum of all consciousness, this collective energy that is everything. And that, there's the religious dogmas that have plagued us and really been the biggest cause of war and society and death and barbarism throughout history.
Right.
Might not be a very efficient way of looking at our role in the universe.
Right. You're familiar with Michael Talbot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the books he wrote, The Holographic Universe and Beyond the Quantum. I loved those two books, and what he likened it to, what our universe was to a hologram, and he talked about a true hologram. You break it up into pieces. It's embedded in a solid form, and then you break it up into pieces, and you look at each of the individual shards that it's broken into, and the whole image is contained within each of the individual pieces, which to me is a wonderful analogy. And I sort of look at it like we are the universe. We are the manner in which the universe experiences itself. We're not outside of the universe, watching the universe from outside. We're inside of it. And so all of our memories, all of these things become a part of the fabric of reality itself. Right?
When I first got into video production, I was doing stuff for like whenever the crews from Discovery would come to town. I lived in Florida, shooting hurricanes for the Weather Channel, that kind of stuff. And I wanted to do something different. And so I went to the International Conference on Science and Consciousness. And this was back before this stuff was cool, before The Secret, before all that. And I interviewed these luminaries. I interviewed Russell Targ. I interviewed Bill Tiller. I interviewed Dean Radin. I interviewed Amika Swami. I interviewed who are today considered some of the greatest minds in this. And I'm absolutely convinced that we're living in a matrix. It's the way the whole way the universe works. It works exactly the way a computer program would work. And David Deutsch, who wrote a really good book called The Nature of Reality. He's a quantum computer researcher at Oxford. He influenced my early influences going into filmmaking. I'm like, these are the topics I want to cover: UFOs, life after death, nature of reality. I mean, everything else is entertainment to keep you dumbed down, as far as I'm concerned. It surprises me that more people aren't just obsessed with understanding their existence a lot more than they are.
Okay, well, Mr. Existence, let's get a little bit deeper here then. Let's talk about something that I've looked at actually I've something that I've looked at for years and years, and that was started with Bob Lazar and the texts that he was allowed to see prior to his little stint at S4. And one of the things that he doesn't really talk about too much, but he did bring up back then, as a matter of fact, I still have a printout of the text from Paranet. Prior to the internet, there was an outfit you may recall called Paranet, which was I guess a paranormal network where folks used to get on there it was a BBS, and you could get on there and they would talk. And this is where Bob Lazar first showed up in 1989 for me, was on this Paranet. Hey, have you heard about this Bob Lazar guy? And he talked about the text that he was allowed to read, where the human race is essentially is an experiment that we were constructed, and they call us containers. That's how the aliens refer to us. They call us containers, and they refer to us as containers because we contain this thing called a soul that they have difficulty understanding. Are you familiar with this?
Well, I'm familiar with the concept. When I talked to Bill Tiller about this, his theory is that we are our physical bodies here are called bio bodysuits. They contain our energetic essence, and they're made to interface with the physical reality that we are here. And when we talk about how much of our brains we're using, I think that a lot of our brains are dedicated towards interpreting energetic signals and manifesting them around us as physical reality. And so if you look at how the universe is constructed and you look at how a computer program works, it's largely the same way. So when you tell people, hey, we're living in this kind of simulation, It literally is a matrix. I could lay it out for you from a proven physics standpoint, how it's absolutely sensible. And so all of these things about different ways to contain the energetic source of what we are inside a physical universe, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
And they say that the human being is the perfected form throughout the universe. There's variations, but if you look at it, 2 arms, 2 legs, opposable thumbs, I mean, it's if you had to refine the design for a physical being that could really function at unlimited potential, this is it. You look around in nature, and there's nothing that comes close.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that comes up in this discussion, this was actually also discussed in Stefano Breccia's books, and what the visitors in these books that he's talking about talk about is that some of our visitors don't have this quality. They don't have what you would call a soul. They're just constructed beings that are able to mimic our behaviors, and they may even appear to be human, but they don't actually have that core consciousness that you and I would refer to as a soul. Yeah, have you heard that?
Well, what's interesting? There's a lot of mythos about how some of the extraterrestrial species don't have this, and that humans are very valuable because we do. And
Mm.
if you do you remember that old show on TV called V?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with both versions, but in the first version that came out like in the '60s or something, the aliens came down and they were harvesting people and wrapping them in saran wrap and cooking them for dinner. In the second version, the entire goal of their program was to figure out a way to extract the souls from the human beings. And so the whole show changed to, we're having you for lunch, to no, we want to capture your soul. And so there's so many mythos out there and so many different ways of looking at it. But I think I tend to not really dismiss stuff unless it's completely poo-poo. And there's definitely something unique about the spirit and the soul. And I think maybe if we're living in truly a digital reality, there could very well be a lot of beings that were created inside of this digital reality that do not have that thing that they extend in their consciousness survives to death. They might just get ground up like cosmic manure and recycled into a new being. And so I think that if you have that ability to survive the death of your physical body somewhat intact, that is what the soul would be referred to as you're dead, you're out of your body, and you still remember being you, and you're still you to some extent. And that is probably that might be very rare, especially for creatures that have been in this matrix for a long time and evolved inside of it. So I think that might be an interesting way of interpreting that.
It's strange that we're talking about this because we started off with the idea that we're scientists, but these questions about who we are and the nature of existence and what is consciousness, those things, they permeate every discussion we have. Whenever we start talking about UFOs, those themes always come out. Well, what is consciousness? What do we have in common with these beings, if there are in fact beings coming and visiting us? So I've heard some tell that some of the beings that we encounter are in fact constructed biological beings. I think that Colonel Corso may have alluded to some of the visitors in that crash perhaps having been constructed because they were woven into their garments, did not appear to have an alimentary canal or any sort of reproductive organs, no way to digest food or to expel waste. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, see, that's a logical progression. I mean, think about it. We have robotics, we have genetics. It's only a matter of time until they fuse into our ability to make a biological robot. And so the fact that even has turned up, and before the idea of a biological robot was even something on people's radar screens, we're talking about the fact, well, yeah, we found them. We're not sure what they are, but here we are, 50 years later, actually able to classify. We could say, well, look, we're doing genetic engineering here, we're doing robotics here. So what he's talking about, back in the '40s were biological robots, but we didn't know that's what they were because nobody really thought of it yet.
You almost have to wonder what the originators looked like, what the creators of these beings might look like. You would posit that they would construct a being that wouldn't freak us out so bad if we saw it. Because they are sending it to an alien planet, but maybe the things that created it are even stranger, insect like, as some have speculated.
All of that stuff is possible. And then also you have to realize that these beings were engineered, if that's what they are, to do specific things. So it makes a lot of sense that they have a big cranium. They're able to process a lot of data. They have these big eyes because they're able to see in a multitude of environments. They have these very spindly bodies because they're operating in zero gravity and all kind. These guys are probably deployed all over the place doing all kinds of stuff, and they have to be built for the job. So in other words, you could be the most beautiful human-like species in the universe, but if you're building robots that have to go through space and do all this, and you're going to build them so that they function for their purpose. So maybe it's not about their copies of their creators. Maybe they're just purpose-built biological robots to do what they're supposed to do.
And you're going to want them to be very robust. You're going to want them to be able to withstand cosmic radiation and all those other sorts of hazards that you're going to run into in deep space, especially when you're approaching different kinds of celestial bodies. I know I keep bringing up this stuff with the friendship cases, but one of the things that they mentioned that Stefano Breccia mentioned in his book was that these beings, these visitors, also construct their craft as they need them. They don't have like a fleet somewhere. They have, I guess, for lack of a better term, computers and other constructs that allow them to simply make a spacecraft for a very specific purpose when they need it. And then when they don't need it anymore, it is disassembled into its basic components. So they have all kinds of different craft, all kinds of different sizes, all kinds of different shapes, with some basic drive systems in common. But for the most part, they don't have a hangar sitting somewhere with 500 flying saucers of different shapes all sitting there. They construct them when they need them.
Something like that would be considered absolutely preposterous 20 years ago. But today we have 3D printing. And if you take 3D printing in 100 years into the future, you're basically going to be able to program a machine that pulls matter, generic matter from out of the environment, reorganizes it on an atomic structure, and constructs a physical thing. And then when it's done, it simply dissolves. It's kind of like the transporter beam on Star Trek, except it's actually creating things from space. And so before the dawn of the 3D printer and our ability to say, well, we don't have to have spare parts anymore. We can just make them. And when we go to Mars, we're not going to need to take spare parts. We're just going to need to take 3D printers that can make them when we need them. And so all of a sudden now that idea that 20 years ago, it'd be like, are you kidding? It actually makes sense. So we could our own pathway to being able to do stuff like that.
Yeah. I've got a collection of Omni magazines up behind me that of course they don't. I have them up in the back of my closet up here, and I can remember in one of these Omni magazine reading about the potential for molecular machines is how they were referred to, and now we're seeing actually this is coming to fruition, just like you're talking about.
Nanotechnology, 3D printing of nanotechnology. Materials that can be purposed for whatever, like even the fiber filament of a 3D printer can be purposed to make whatever you want, and you can get all kinds of different filaments. So, like say you could probably 3D print a functional spaceship now. They're even talking about that's how they're going to do some of the Mars ships that Elon's working on.
I read an article today about Kentucky Fried Chicken is now going to start 3D printing their chicken products, starting with the cloned cells of chickens. And so you won't have to kill chickens anymore. They'll just get some clone, and they'll just continually clone them, and then they'll 3D print your chicken McNuggets or your chicken nuggets. They're not muck nuggets because they come from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
There's been rumors about Kentucky Fried Chicken growing chickens in meat trays for years. So none of it would surprise me. I think in the day and age where we're going to be able to 3D print stuff, they're going to be able to 3D print organs. If you need a new heart, they're going to be able to make you one.
I
This
think
is
that while they do that right now, they're 3D printing organs right now. My granddaughter has an ear, and that was deformed, and they will be able to make an ear for her. They will, when she gets old enough, they will be able to 3D print an ear for her that she can just she'll just have. And it'll be her ear. It's amazing to me, the kinds of things that they can do with this technology.
Well, think about where it's going to be 50, 100 years in the future. And then, it kind of segues into the thing that we were going to talk about next, I think, was the uh, whole situation about where some of this technology came from.
Right.
There's always been the idea. Some people believe Philip Corso, some people don't, and so I don't want to wade into that. But what I do believe is that we have discovered technology and that we can't figure out, and that it has been ported to different individuals to try and make some sense out of it. There's a lot of evidence for that, and now we have even more with these freedom of information requests that came out, and so that's a deeper dive too, because on the surface they seem like they're pretty explosive, but then anybody that wants to debunk them is going to find grounds for debunking. But then if you look even deeper, grounds for debunking go away. So like so many of these things, it's a mystery inside an enigma wrapped in a mystery inside of a whole lot of BS. So
Right. Well, these materials are really, don't you think, Ron, where the rubber meets the road, and that's always been the, I guess, the hurdle that so-called UFO researchers have had to overcome. People who are so-called believers. Well, where are the pieces of these things? If they're UFOs all over the place, then where are they? How come they don't have pieces of them in a lab somewhere? Well, guess what? We've had pieces of them in a lab for a really long time, and now we have the government essentially admitting that they've had these pieces of these things and that they've been studying them, and the materials that they're finding are really, really strange. So let's talk about that.
yeah, so this is a Freedom of Information Act request, and this was put in by a guy. I hope I pronounce his name right, Anthony Brigaglia. Brigaglia.
Yeah, I'm looking at
Brigaglia.
his website right now. Yeah.
This guy's been doing a lot of this work for a long time. He deserves a lot of credit. But in this particular FOIA app or FOIA request, he asked specifically, and this is very important, it's going to be very important later. He asked specifically for physical debris recovered by personnel of the Department of Defense as residue, flotsam, shot off material, or crashed material from UAPs or unidentified flying objects. So the fact that they provided this, and on the surface it's like, well, wait a minute, they're not talking about that. They're talking about like nitinol, the metal from the Roswell crash that supposedly had memory is a similar material is referenced in this, and it turns out that it's called nitinol. It was supposedly invented in a U.S. Navy weapons lab. In fact, the reason that it is called nitinol is because, bear with me for a second, it stands for Nickel Titanium Naval Ordnance Laboratory. Now, nitinol is a biologically compatible shape-shifting memory-retaining metal. And believe it or not, it is available to industry right now. You can buy it in rolls, you can buy it in sheets, you can make heart stents out of it, you can make jewelry out of it. So people are like, well, so there's nothing special about that. It's nitinol, it's been around for years. And so the debunkers are like, okay, see, it was invented by us. It's debunked. This whole Pentagon release is debunked. It's not true. But the fact of the matter is, not so fast. The Freedom of Information request was very, very specific. It asked specifically for material that was recovered from crashed UFOs. I'm paraphrasing. So the fact that this material was included in this is like he didn't ask for material that was invented in a Navy weapons lab that sounds like Roswell tinfoil. He asked specifically for this. And so we get nitinol. We look at the history of nitinol. Navy weapons lab guy invents it in 1959, kind of supports the concept that the technology was ported from a Roswell type incident or some other recovery, and then surfaces later. And they still can't completely back engineer the stuff. They figured out some of its properties and how to make a memory alloy, but it's not as good as what came off the ships. And so is the DIA release admitting the existence of unexplained materials from UFOs? Yes. And then all of a sudden, no. But then you dig a little deeper and all of a sudden, yes. Right. So it takes a little bit of research. And then when you look at the other materials, I interviewed Chris Mellon back before Unidentified, and it's going to be one of our shows coming up. And hey, Chris, he actually told me that he'd heard stories about recovered crash debris. And we know now what we didn't know then is that, yeah, these materials actually found their way to Bigelow Aerospace in the ATIP program, and they probably found their way to a lot of other places. But Bob Bigelow went on and talked to George Knapp and said, yeah, there's machines and there's materials, and the problem is we can't figure out how to back engineer them. And so this Defense Intelligence Agency release is everything it's cracked up to be. You just have to dig a little deeper to understand it, that's the truth. And so, the other thing is,
tell folks
materials.
Tell folks where they can find these documents, Ron.
So if you go to Anthony's website, it's ufoexplorations.com, and it's all still on the front page. You can download the Freedom of Information Act request. You can read the summary from him, and then you can also download the reports. He received 154 pages of scientific analysis of these materials. And so while one of the materials already exists, a bunch of the other materials don't exist, including material that can be used to slow down light or bring light to a complete standstill. They do not reference existing materials that are being used in our technology. Light that may induce, material that may induce invisibility by manipulating refraction, reflectivity, and increasing light absorption. We don't have that at Walmart. Has the interesting ability to compress electromagnetic energy. And then another one that exhibits a particular tunable resonance, which was likely determined during fabrication. So, what does that all mean? We don't have time to go into it right now, but you can dig deeper on the website. But what it basically means is that, yes, these metamaterials that they're calling them are materials that we did not make, and we don't understand how they work, and we cannot reverse engineer them. And they are part of a Freedom of Information Act request that specifically said, we want stuff about the crash retrieval debris. And the summary, which is really interesting.
This debris is manufactured too, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of it seems to be manufactured in zero gravity environments. So the Defense Intelligence Agency dropped this. The Pentagon immediately tried to walk it back, but they can't. They've really got themselves stuck. And when they summarize this thing and they conclude it, it's that what's difficult to pinpoint the exact applications that metamaterials will find in advanced aerospace industry. The materials possess several features that uniquely suit them for aerospace applications. So for people that say these are all materials that we already have, well, no, not really, because if we already had them, we'd know what we're going to do with them, and we'd be doing it. Right now, we're just looking at this stuff, scratching our heads and saying, yeah, this stuff it's incredible what it might do, but we have no idea how to use it. So this is huge. And, it's just it used to be a drip of disclosure, and now it's kind of the faucet's turning on a little bit, and we're getting a pretty steady stream. And so it's a fantastic time to be involved in the field. And hats off to Anthony for doing that hard work. And he shared with me some email exchanges that he's asked me to keep quiet, but for now, between him and the DIA guy, where they really drill down into, no, this is what I want. I want this stuff to be specifically related to the wording in my request. So we have an acknowledgement, an official acknowledgement of materials that we cannot identify that have amazing, highly high-tech properties. And so that's fascinating that that's happened.
And if you talk to Stephen Bassett, you know that we're getting ready for something, that they're going to tell us something. And of course, Stephen's been saying that for years, and I gave him some guff about this when I talked to him last week. But I think Stephen's right. I think that something is happening. Wouldn't you agree? It all started with the release of the videos, the Tic Tac stuff that Lou laid on us a couple of years ago, and it's just escalated since then.
I have this theory, and I really think that it's true. These guys have been back in the Roswell day. I really think that the MJ-12 type of scenario happened. I think the information was placed under lock and key, and that it's gotten deeper and deeper into black budgets and away from any kind of public accountability. But what I also believe, because right around the time Blue Book ended, of course, is the time MUFON got really strong, and their initial mission was, somebody's got to keep doing this work. And so you have these guys that are sworn to secrecy to protect this information, to not let anybody know. And we all resent that to an extent. But I think also we should be giving these guys a little bit of credit, because the fact of the matter is that even though they're sworn to keep it from the public, the people that really, really want to know, the people that are like the MUFON people, the 40,000 or so people worldwide that really care about this topic, they've been told, they're getting the information. They're getting it in little leaks. They're getting it in here, connect the dots and you'll know what's going on. So these guys have, even though they're keeping it a secret from the mainstream public, they've been telling us all along what's happening. And maybe we all are on the same team. So I think it's really interesting that that's been going on, because if you really want to know what's happened with the UFO thing and you're willing to do the research, you're going to know what's going on with the UFO thing. And the guys that are hiding the information that people are complaining about all the time are the very guys that have left you the breadcrumbs to figure it out. Yeah. And so what's happening now is we're in a situation where they know that we have to disclose. I mean, sooner or later, these things are just going to land on somebody's lawn. So
Well, you just hit the nail on the head there, Ron. I'll think about this for a second. And I've always believed this, and I still believe this, that it is the visitors that are in control of the secrecy. If they wanted the whole planet to know they were here, they would just simply appear en masse over the planet. Yeah. If they want to keep themselves secret, they can do that. They're showing themselves to us purposefully. And I think that I get the feeling that it may be the visitors themselves that are pushing this and saying, look, you guys are going to blow yourselves up. You need some help. And it's way too far past where you should have told your population about us. And so if you don't tell them, we're going to tell them.
Yeah. And so how do you do that? Well, you start with a guy like Tom DeLonge, who's a mainstream dude. And he gets in with some guys that are in government that know what's going on.
And kudos to Tom. Kudos to Tom DeLonge, because Absolutely. When I can remember seeing him on Joe Rogan, and Joe really gave him some guff. And Joe's really come around too. I like watching Joe Rogan. I love watching his show, but he really gave Tom a lot of guff. And Tom wasn't necessarily able to describe the metamaterials the way that perhaps a scientist would be able to do it. But by God, Tom DeLonge got the job done, didn't he? He did exactly what he said he was going to do. He got in with the folks at the DIA and at the Pentagon, and he did learn about some things, and he was able to share that with the world. And so, I think that Tom DeLonge changed the world, and I appreciate
absolutely. When he formed this, I believe that the guys that were trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get this information out? They embraced the TTSA. And they helped put it together. They gave Tom Lou, and they gave Tom these other guys. And it is part of an organized rollout. And that is why guys like us and people that know all this information, but we're not on that same train, represent a little bit of a problem. I don't know. Look what happened to poor Robert Bigelow. Okay. He went on 60 Minutes. He spilled the beans about the aliens. And his super advanced aerospace company that was doing work that nobody is doing is gone. And his technology has been spread out to all kinds of other NASA vendors. He got really spanked, and I think that's why. And so we're dealing with it. Now these guys have this organized rollout. Hey, we're gonna put Lou and Chris on TV on Unidentified, and we're gonna take this to the next level. And then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do that. And these guys are running the show, whether we like it or not. And you can either be part of what they're trying to do or cooperate with it, or you can be a kind of a renegade, and that's being frowned upon at this point. So yeah, this is an organized effort at disclosure being put on by the people that have been hiding this stuff forever, and they're doing it the way they're doing it. It's not a spontaneous thing. This is a lot of planning that's gone into how we're going to lay this out for people. And they've got to maintain their deniability. They can't get people on that are going to admit that this has been this big deception. So they've really put a lot of thought into how they're going to play it, and we're watching it unfold, and in our own way, we're a part of it.
Yeah, and I think that they're doing it the right way. I mean, if this all just kind of spilled out like like Watergate or whatever, but I do think that they're doing it in the correct way. They had to keep it secret. I mean, really, you couldn't tell everybody, not based upon what we knew back then, but it is time for us to know. It's time we are going to have to learn sooner or later that this is the case. And fortunately for individuals like us, we're not going to have to go through that major psychological process of coming to grips with the fact that we're being visited by extraterrestrials, because we've already gone through that process. I wake up every morning going, geez, I wonder what's going to happen to people when they find out this is real.
It's frustrating for people like us that are in the field that know this stuff. Like, I could watch Unidentified, and I'm working on a whole thing beyond Unidentified where we talk about all the stuff that was really going on underneath all this. It's like, hey, public, here's this little tidbit. Well, wait a minute. That's not the tidbit. There's a whole bunch of stuff that a lot of people know. And so we're frustrated with what we're seeing and the way it's unfolding. And I think that for the UFO community, I understand that frustration, but I also say to everybody, like right now I'm saying it, there's 7 billion people on the planet, and they need to be brought along in a sensitive way. And so I know it's frustrating that they're not just spilling the beans and they're not telling us everything that we already know. And so it seems like, it's very unsatisfying, but the whole rest of the planet has to absorb this information, and we have to understand that that's how it's being treated. It's not like, hey, let's not tell everybody everything and make the UFO community feel like they're being jerked around and piss them off. Nobody's trying to do that. They're trying to figure out how to get the whole of humanity on board with as little social change and catastrophic reaction as possible. So as much as I wish they would just get on TV and introduce us to Valiant Thor, it's not going to happen. And we just have to understand that, and we have to be really grateful that at least it's starting to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Folks like us, we've kind of been on board with this whole process, but the rest of humanity is not. And you really have to be careful with them. You got to have to, and we have the public, you have to admit, has been spoon fed this information over many, many, many decades. And with the idea in mind that eventually this information is going to have to come out. This is not something that you can keep completely secret forever. It has been coming out, and it's something that we're just going to have to deal with as a species. It's just something that it just has to happen. And I'm really happy that we've got MUFON to help do that. And that, which kind of I guess helps me segue into the next part of this, which is MUFON television and the things that you've been doing at MUFON TV. I've got the MUFON TV website up here. Do you want to tell folks about MUFON TV and what we can do with MUFON TV, how to sign up for MUFON TV, how to participate? I've got the MUFON TV website up here right now. So
yeah, if you want to do a share screen, I'll tell you how to click around. But first, let me just say that as this stuff unfolds and as the public becomes more and more aware of this reality, MUFON is more important than ever. And not just MUFON television. This is where you can go if you're like, wow, this is really real. How long has this been going on, and how much have we known? You go to MUFON television, you're going to find out everything you need to know about the history of all of this. And it's all archived there for you, and it's commercial free, and and there's no junk. It's all relevant stuff. So MUFON's going to play a very important role moving into the future, because people are going to need community to gather around, groups to think this through and analyze it. And MUFON is here. That we're your community. We're here for you. MUFON TV is a place you can come and see a bunch of really fun stuff. So let's just talk quickly about how the website.
Yeah, let me tell you, I do have the MUFON website up, but I'm having some difficulty doing the share screen because
yeah, I see it.
So can you see the MUFON website up?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about the MUFON website and how we need to get in there and how we can subscribe and all that.
So I wanted to build something that was easy to navigate. And so basically behind very simple icons is a wealth of content. So if you go down to the little bar where it says this is the complete MUFON symposium at where underneath the slides.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now if you scroll through that, it moves those slides.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Okay, and you
cool.
get all of the different categories.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff that we have on MUFON TV. And we have all of the MUFON symposiums going all the way back to 2011, I think. There's my show, Bigger Questions. It's all ET stuff. And we have some fun stuff. Like this is some Star Trek stuff that was produced that we get to use. Some sci-fi movies that we really like. Our ET film commercial collection of some relevant ET films.
Let's go
And
back
then,
this other way
like,
because
let's
there's some
go.
other stuff on here. You got the 2012, 13, 14, all the symposiums. Cool.
Yeah, all those symposiums were all remastered in high def. And then like if you go back to the news, there's are you signed in?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I
okay.
thought I
So
was.
go back what a couple, yeah, go back a couple more because then when you some of the pages are free, but some of them are behind the paywall. So like if you see MUFON Podcast, now right
Yep.
here, if you look at this and now if you click on this, click on that link. It's
Yeah.
going to take you to a page.
Okay. Maybe I'm not logged in here.
Oh, yeah, you have to be logged in.
I could have sworn.
We could go to a free page.
Let's see here. I could have sworn. Well, no, it says I'm
You
logged.
know what?
Yeah, it says I'm logged
It
in.
says your status is expired, but I thought I fixed that a little while ago. It says
Yeah.
okay. Well, let's just go to a free page. So if you go
Okay.
back to the home page,
Okay.
and now if you scroll down, there's one of the pages that we're making free now. So you can click on that. There's right there. This is the interview I did with Stanton Friedman. It's
Okay.
a lot of people say it's the best interview with Stanton ever. It's something you can watch for free, no commercials. But
Okay.
if you go back,
Okay. Back up.
I wanted to take you to a page where you can see how the playlist works. So just click on the Roswell movie image.
Okay.
Back to Roswell. Behind every one of these icons is a playlist. So here's the playlist. And the way it works is all of the films in that certain category are embedded in this playlist. So if you go down and say you click on a different one, it brings it up the description. And this is all MUFON original stuff that we've created. And now if you hit play, then you can go widescreen and you can watch it. And so this is my interview with Katie Cook.
On this episode,
she's an experiencer and she's the host of Country Music Television.
Katie is
really,
not
really
only a well-known
bright girl. She's MUFON in Tennessee. And so that's how you find the different content. Here's my introduction to the show. This is our set for MUFON Television. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's a cool set. I love that set.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've built these little studios. I built the studio myself. This set is made up of all video walls. So everywhere you're looking, that's not a green screen. Those are genuine,
cool,
grouped 55-inch televisions. So I can put whatever kind of graphics I want to put on them and change it all up. But if you go back to the playlist, that's how you can navigate categories. Is once you're on a page that like a year of symposiums, all the videos will be on that line underneath, and you can just click on what you want to watch. You can see the description. That's another set I built. There's me and Steve Bassett about a year or so ago. This is a good interview because it's right when the TTSA stuff was breaking. And so we talk at length about Tom DeLonge and TTSA and what they're all about. And I'm always building these cool little sets that look like spaceships. I think
that's cool. Yeah, I've always really liked the way your sets looked, and one of the things that I really like about them, of course, is that it's not just some green screen that you put something in front of. You really build these really nice sets. You know, I love that.
Yeah, they're elaborate, and it's a lot of fun. And what I really want to do is the content that we produce for MUFON Television. You're not going to see it on the History Channel. We're not spending, $200,000 for a half-hour production, but we're also not making YouTube quality videos. These are quality productions. And the thing is we're not being filtered by anybody. Nobody is telling us what we can say and what we can't say, what we can talk about, what we can't talk about. We're putting forth legitimate information with no agenda or constraints. And that's what you're going to get from MUFON television. You're going to get a fantastic archive of relevant, scientifically reasonable material that's not going to lead you astray. And you're going to get community, and you're going to get some really fun productions that are just fun to watch and that you can actually be a part of. Plus our live events that every year you're going to get the MUFON Symposium live. You're going to be invited to participate in other live shows, like we just did the Facebook Live with Craig Campobasso, where we talked about his new book, the MUFON book. I think I have it. Where'd it go? I don't, but it's the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac that Craig just wrote. Let me go get it.
Yeah.
It's a MUFON published book. And
okay.
It's doing really well. So this is the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. Now, I got a little bit of flack for promoting this book because how scientific can this be? You know, 87 alien species.
Right.
Part of scientific journey is documenting the mythos as well. So do all these aliens really exist? Who knows? But it's a fun book. And, you know, for all those people that have the experience of waking up in the morning and there's something standing at the foot of their bed, or they drove past an alien on the side of the road and they're not really sure what kind it is. That's why they need this. It's your field guide to your extraterrestrial encounters. So anyway, MUFON TV has a lot to offer. It's fresh, it's fun, it's not expensive. You can get it with your MUFON membership, or you can just subscribe to the channel if you want. And we're working on other types of membership packages that appeal to not just investigators, but people that just really want to be part of the insider UFO community when all this stuff starts to really get real.
Well, that's the really cool thing about just being a part of MUFON, and just to even be able to just go to the YouTube channel, go to MUFON TV, and learn about all of this stuff. And what's really cool is that it's real, that MUFON does in fact, you run in fact, and MUFON has sort of an inside track with all the individuals that are directly involved in what is happening right now. That's what I love is the fact that, you know, I've been chasing these things. You've been chasing these things for a long time, and I've been chasing them my entire life. And now to be in the position that I'm in on the board, and to be able to talk with folks like Lou Elizondo and these guys, and to be able to just to be able to hang out with them, and it's a dream come true. These guys are rock stars to me.
They are, and you know, I think one of the most very touching moments for me in relation to MUFON was at the MUFON Symposium shortly after Lou had gone public. He came and gave his keynote. And he said, you know, you guys have put up with years and years of ridicule, and you've put up with people thinking you were crazy. And he said right there, he says, all along, you were right.
And that was a great moment. I was there. I was sitting right there. That was a great moment, man.
It was absolutely amazing. And of course, he's very reluctant to say that publicly. So that, you know, that's part of what you get when you're involved with MUFON, is that there's things that you're going to be privy to that you're not going to see on the History Channel. A&E's doing a great job. They've done more for disclosure than any mainstream outlet, but you know, they're limited too. They've got handlers that are telling them how far they can go. I can't say that is 100% factual, but it's an opinion that I have. So I don't want to like.
Well, let's be clear too. Just generally speaking, when it comes to this sort of stuff, when we start talking about things like different alien species and consciousness and things like that, that's when we're just speculating about those things. We really. But it does seem to be where all of these things are sort of pointing and leading, but we do, and what I enjoy about MUFON is we just stick with the facts, ma'am. And this is what the facts say, that there are objects operating in our airspace that defy known methods of propulsion. It's just that simple. There's no two ways about it. That's what I love about it. That is the scientific fact.
That is a scientific fact. And it's just like we were talking about the nature of reality a minute ago. And people that think that the whole matrix theory is far out, look at what we already know. We know that physical matter does not really exist as we perceive it. It is energy vibrating at a certain frequency to produce the illusion of solidity. Okay, we know this. We're not just making it up. We know that the holographic universe exists, that faster than light travel is possible through the holographic effect of the way it all works. We know that when we get to the level of quantum computing, we're going to have a computer that's capable of creating a convincing artificial reality. And that's a quote. So it's not that far-fetched. You might start laughing at first, but then when you're like, well, no, really, it's almost proven that we are an energetic based illusion and that physical matter is not real. And what we were talking about earlier with the whole human bodies being engineered as carriers for the experiences that we have and interfacing with this illusion of the physical world, yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense, because if none of it's real, then it is what it is. And
I think Niels Bohr was the first one to say that everything portends consciousness.
Absolutely. It's the root of all of it. And you can, we could go for hours probably having that conversation, but I think that, yeah, the big question is, of course, well, what spawned consciousness? Where did that come from? And you can postulate the nature of our existence, but I think that's the big cosmic roadblock that's beyond our pay grade. It's like we can figure out what God is or what consciousness is. We can come up with theories about the nature of this particular reality we're in. But when it comes to, where did the root, the source of all that come from? That's just a big roadblock. I don't think we're ever going to get in at this level.
Not in this life. I suspect that quite a bit will be revealed upon death.
Probably. I think people might be a little disappointed from when I talk to the near-death guys and the ghost investigators and all those people. I think that there's probably these major levels that we have to transverse as spirits, and I think just dying in a whole existence on Earth might not be like all of a sudden the keys to the universe are unlocked because you were a good person for a while. I think our spiritual journey has a long way to go.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, Ron, we're near the end of our time, but I really appreciate you being here with me tonight. It's been great having this talk, and I really hope we get to do it again, like soon.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be covering more and more breaking news. I'm putting a team together so that if it's breaking, like we should be talking about all this stuff, what's happening with SpaceX, what's going on with Mars, what's going on with UFO stuff, what's going on with science and technology. So we're trying to encapsulate it all into something, and we're going to have, well, we do already, but we're going to have more and more exciting, timely pieces just dropping all over the place. And so there'll always be something to talk about.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. We'll talk again soon, and I'll be back with just a few minutes with some afterthoughts.
You are not alone. Thousands of people all over the world have sightings of UFOs per month. MUFON is the place to report them. Since 1969, MUFON has been investigating UFO reports and providing this information to the public. Our aim is the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. Support UFO research. Join MUFON today.
You are listening to the official podcast of the Mutual UFO Network.
Welcome back. The mere existence of UFOs, UAPs, call them what you will, raises so many questions beyond what are they and how do they work. If you are a true scientist, one must inevitably begin to ask, who makes them? Where do they come from? Who pilots them? Are there people inside, or are they remotely piloted somehow? What does this mean about us and our place in the universe? Who are we? Where do we come from? And on and on and on. The study of UFOs and the education of the public regarding the reality of the phenomenon is not an undertaking for the weak, and it takes bold visionaries like Ron James to bring this issue into the light of day, unfiltered by any marketing or production considerations beyond informing the public in a professional, straightforward, and visually innovative and compelling way. Thank you for joining me here once again. If you're watching our YouTube channel, please remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time, right here on the official MUFON Podcast.